Are you looking to get started with building a terrarium? And do you know the 5 basic components that go into every terrarium? In this video, we're going to show you the 5 simple steps to build your own terrarium that's going to last a long time and give you a great chance of finding success. Hey guys, it's Joe here from Hermit Garden. And in this video, we're going to talk about the 5 basic components that go into a terrarium. So what I have for you in this video is a terrarium that I've made myself. I'm going to use this as a template to kind of walk through those 5 components and what they do and why you need them. Okay, so first thing we got here, number 1, is the container. That's probably the first thing that you're going to notice here. So I think for this terrarium I used a plastic container that I had from an empty can of peanuts. And I just decided to repurpose it for a terrarium. So basically the thing that you're going to be looking for with your container is that it's transparent and light can easily get through here and get absorbed by your plants for photosynthesis. So pretty much anything that's plastic like this container right here or glass is going to be great for a terrarium. I would say the only thing that I would avoid is anything that's colored or that would filter out any light that's getting into there. So I'd say probably stay away from any wine bottles that are colored. Like we have a dark brown color or something like that. You're going to want to stay away from those. Anything that's clear, transparent is going to work fine. I'm sure you probably have something lying around your house that you're not really using and you can repurpose for a terrarium. Anything like that would be great. In terms of size, I would say the bigger your container is, the easier it's going to be to work with your terrarium. So something like this it's decent. I think the opening's pretty convenient. I can stick my hand in there, easily access my plants, and it was also pretty easy to add the materials into the container when it was open. If you want to go really big, you can go with a big plastic tub. You can find those at like a Walmart or something, or Lowe's. If you just grab one of those for like $10 or $20, and that'll give you a whole bunch of space to put in a lot of plants and give you a lot of space to work with your terrarium. So I would say if you want to get started as a complete beginner, I would stick to something really big like a huge tub, and that'll give you a lot of options to work with. It also gives you a buffer from overwatering or underwatering your terrarium. There's just like more space to kind of balance out any overwatered or extreme conditions that you might accidentally apply to your terrarium. So that's the container. That's the first component that goes into a terrarium. The second thing that we're going to talk about is the drainage layer, or the false bottom is sometimes called. So if you take a look at this terrarium right here, I'm going to bring it a little bit closer. You'll notice at the bottom here I have a whole bunch of rocks, and what that's doing is it's serving as a drainage layer material. So the whole purpose of the drainage layer is to create a space for water to drain out of your substrate or out of your soil away from your plant roots, while also aerating your soil at the same time as air enters into the spots that the water once was. So as water drains into the drainage layer, it kind of sits there for a bit, and eventually it evaporates, comes back up into the top of the terrarium, condenses, and trickles back down into for your plants to drink that water. So as for the material that you're going to use for your false bottom, pretty much most materials will work as long as they're going to last for a pretty long time in the presence of water. For this terrarium right here, I use rocks. Rocks are a really great option. In my opinion, they're the easiest to get your hands on. You can go out to a local park like I did and just pick up some rocks off the ground and put it into a terrarium. Or you can go to like a Home Depot and just go to the landscaping section and get a bag of rocks. That also works. Pretty much anything that's pretty hard, has kind of an irregular shape, is going to be fine at providing that empty space. So some other ideas that come to mind, you can use marbles. If you have some marbles lying around, I think that would look pretty cool. Maybe a little bit more on the expensive side. Otherwise, anything like sand will even work. Although the one thing about sand is you want to avoid that might cause problems with water leaking back into your soil. I don't know. It could work, but I haven't tried it really myself. But I think sand would also be another option for you. Basically, as long as you're creating that empty space for water to drain into, you should probably be fine with the false bottom. So, okay, the third thing that we're going to talk about is the separation layer. So if you look in this terrarium that I have here, you'll notice that there's kind of like a white line that comes across down here. And that's a separation layer material that I use. I think it's some kind of plastic foam of some sort that I just kind of had lying around that was probably going to go recycle anyways. So in terms of the separation layer, you have a lot of choices. The whole purpose of the separation layer is to separate out the substrate from your drainage layer. So you just don't want those two things mixing together, just because that kind of defeats the purpose of the drainage layer, which is to keep any stagnant water away from your plant roots. And so by keeping them separated from each other, you're making sure those plant roots don't actually grow into the drainage layer and running into the same problem that you were trying to avoid in the first place. So as long as the separation material does that job without like rusting or degrading over time in water, that's probably going to work out fine for you. So if you want to go really low budget, you can get a plastic bag, poke some holes in it, and just cut out a shape and place it in here. That'll probably work fine. Window wire screen mesh is also going to work as long as it's not made of metal, so that it doesn't rust. That's also a great option. It's another thing that I've used for another terrarium of mine. Basically, as long as water can pass through that separation layer, it should be fine for your terrarium. Okay, let's see. The fourth component we're going to talk about here is the substrate. So substrate is a fancy word for whatever soil or substrate material your plants are gonna grow in. So for most people, that's gonna be soil or some kind of potting mix. Those are probably my go-to options. For soil, you can either get it from Home Depot, just find a bag of potting mix soil and use that for your terrarium, or you can try getting it from a local park. Just scoop some dirt up and just put it into a terrarium. That's also another option. There's a couple other options that come to mind. You can also use coir. That's like it's like a coconut husk, and the thing that I would avoid or be careful about that is it doesn't have any nutrients of its own. So if you do use coir, that's spelled COIR, you're gonna want to add a little bit of supplements in there like perlite to give your plant a little bit of extra nutrients. But I'd say if you're using potting mix or any soil that you find in your backyard or something, that's probably going to be fine. The fifth thing that we're going to have in this terrarium that we're going to talk about is your plants. So I feel like the plants is pretty straightforward. Those are the plants. That's the main feature of your terrarium. So let's see. In this terrarium right here, I have a bunch of moss, a little bit of grass. I'm seeing, I think that's mainly it. Yeah, just moss and grass. But that's basically the main feature of your terrarium, your plants that are going to grow inside of your container. So if you're not sure which plants to pick, two options that I would recommend. First one is moss, and the second is ferns. So those two guys really love high humidity, high moisture, and low sunlight environments. And any kind of plants you can find that fit those criteria are going to do great in a terrarium where there's like a lot of humidity and generally is best outside of direct sunlight. So I say the plants is pretty straightforward. You can either grab some plants around nature that you see sitting around that you think would fit inside of your container. That would probably be fine. The other option, you can do your own research, buy them online, but I would recommend, if you're just getting started, gathering some plants at a local park is probably gonna do just fine for you. I think for this term, that's what I decided to do. Just grab some moss and some grass and just added it in there, and seems to be doing fine so far. I think I put this one together about 3 months or so, and so far it's doing fine. So that's pretty much it. That's the 5 basic components to your terrarium. So just a recap, we have the container, we have the drainage layer, we have the separation layer, and we have the substrate, and we have your plants. So those are the 5 things. If you have those 5 things, you have a functioning, well set up terrarium, and you should have pretty good chances of finding long-term success with your terrarium build. So that's it for this video. That's all I had to talk about. If you want to learn more, I have an article on this topic on my website, hermitgarden.com. I'll leave a link down in the description below if you guys want to check that out. Or you can Google Hermit Garden 5 layers in a terrarium and you'll probably find it. But other than that, that's all I had for you. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.